Welcome to Career Practitioner Conversations. This podcast is presented by the National Career Development Association. Welcome to the NCDA podcast. I'm Melissa Venable, NCDA Director of Professional Development, and this episode continues our DEI Symposium series with a conversation about employment barriers and the importance of neuro-inclusive career advising. It features Lauren Standish, a graduate student currently working in career services at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and Reuben Britt. Reuben is an assistant director and host of Career Talk with the Office of Career Advancement at Rowan University.
Welcome to the NCDA Diversity, Equity, Inclusion podcast series. My name is Reuben Britt, and I will be hosting today's podcast. Writer, poet, and advocate Karen Draper once said, "Diversity doesn't look like anyone, it looks like everyone." Joining me today on the NCDA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion podcast is Lauren Standish. Lauren, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your career journey?
Yes. Hi. Thank you for having me. And my career journey, like I think a lot of students and professionals, was not linear. It was not very clear. I did a lot of experimentation. I did go to college right after high school. Assuming I knew exactly what I wanted to do, I started in the psychology program in undergrad. I did about a year of that and decided I didn't want to go to grad school. So I didn't want to do psychology anymore, which is ironic now since I'm in grad school. I switched to music education, did that for a semester, realized that wasn't quite right either, and then became a college dropout. I really had no idea what I wanted to pursue. I had a lot of interests. I knew I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed being creative. I really liked supervising and managing other people, but I really had no clear idea. So I transferred to an out of city school and just settled on business because it was safe. So I realized I enjoyed HR and management. I got my bachelor's in that and worked in HR for about 2 years and realized that wasn't quite right either. So I did some kind of career soul searching and found that I really enjoyed, again, helping people, working with other people, and specifically student development. Currently, I'm in grad school for higher education and adult continuing education. I have professional interests in career advising, college student support services, training and development, people and organizational development. Again, I've got a lot of these interests, and it's no clear linear path or one exact thing. But what I've learned is that's okay. It's okay to not know exactly. And just having a lot of interests and experiences broadens your skill sets and your insight into your own self and can lead to more opportunities.
Earlier, I quoted Karen Draper about diversity and that it doesn't look like anyone, looks like everyone. And you reflect that statement because you recently conducted a presentation at the NCDA conference as part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Symposium. What was the title of your presentation?
Yes, that presentation was Employment Barriers and the Importance of Neuro-inclusive Career Advising. So neuro-inclusive relating to neurodiversity among students.
Now, for those who are unaware, can you shed some light in terms of what is neurodiversity?
Yes. So neurodiversity by definition relates to diversity in brain structure and function, understanding that each brain or each individual's brain is unique. While they develop similarly, they're always going to be even just slightly different. As a social movement, neurodiversity refers to differences between individuals who are neurodivergent and individuals who are neurotypical.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say the percentage of the population in this country is diagnosed as neurodivergent?
Yes, it's estimated that roughly 15 to 20% in total population is neurodivergent. However, it is significant to note, too, that the term diagnosis is connected to the medical model of neurodiversity, whereas the term neurotype may be the term some neurodivergence used to identify And also there is privilege in receiving a formal diagnosis. Many don't have access to receive that formal diagnosis for the neurodivergent condition that they might have, though many do identify as being neurodivergent without having a formal diagnosis because their lived experiences reflect those lived experiences of those who may have a diagnosis. And they can see some similarities within themselves and have that like validation or that themselves reflected in others like them.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are basically three different types of terms related to neurodiversity: neurodivergent, neurotypical, and neurotype. Can you explain them?
Yes, absolutely. Again, speaking from the social model, neurodivergent is a non-medical term. It describes individuals whose brain structure and function diverges from what is considered the typical brain. It's not inherently good or bad. It's just different. It just is. However, those differences are met with challenges or barriers when navigating the world because the world has been designed for a person with a quote-unquote typical brain. Neurotypical then refers to individuals whose brain developed and functions in a way that is perceived as typical. It works in the way that the world has been designed. From the perspective of the medical model, it's not associated with any conditions related to the brain structure or function. For example, autism. Autism is a condition associated with being neurodivergent. So a neurotypical brain would not show a condition such as autism. And then neurotype describes the type of brain for an individual. It's similar to what the word we use, condition, although neurotype is more closely connected to the social model of neurodiversity, whereas the term condition is used more with regard to the medical model.
Now, what are some of the barriers that prevent neurodivergent students from finding employment?
Yes, there are a lot of them. And unfortunately, they're not always very clear cut. So if we look at employment rates from 2022, we see that compared with the U.S. national average, 3.7% unemployment, neurodivergents were unemployed at 30 to 40%, which is a very significant difference. So you have to wonder what is going on and how can we get that percentage down. So a lot of barriers come from individuals' perception and understanding of neurodiversity or lack thereof. There are a lot of hiring processes which aren't neuro-inclusive. So, for example, what we think of when we think of good interviewing practice involves eye contact, body language, fidgeting or not fidgeting, managers wanting to hire for culture, a good culture fit. These aren't always inclusive of individuals' neurotypes. I know I identify as having ADHD. I have a formal diagnosis and I'm very open about that. And I know that there are certain barriers that I face. And it wasn't until only about 2-3 years ago that I realized it affected my own interviewing skills because I thought I was a great interviewer because I'm bubbly and I'm friendly and I'm outgoing and I'm chatty. And in addition to that, I have my skill sets. I have my great skill sets and my background. However, after returning from an interview, I spoke with the recruiter who said they liked me, but thought my answers were disorganized. And it wasn't until then I realized, hey, maybe I'm not a great interviewer because my answers just aren't good. So it takes much more than just the personality fit or the skills fit to have a successful interview with the way that interviews and hiring practices are structured currently. So, and that does pose a lot of barriers to neurodivergent candidates, regardless of their neurotype or condition. And in addition, despite these barriers, it has been research found that autistic employees can be up to 140% more productive than their neurotypical colleague. So despite that research and that statistic, neurodivergent students and employees are still underemployed or unemployed at a much, much higher rate than neurotypicals.
Wow. Now, with that in mind, career advising practices different for neurodivergent students?
Yes, and career advising practices should be different for all students. So just like neurotypical students, advising approaches should be tailored to that individual's needs. But it's important to not generalize neurotypical versus neurodivergent career advising approach. It should be based on each individual's needs. However, there might be some additional considerations with neurodivergent students' needs or experiences. If a student chooses to disclose their condition or neurotype, there are different challenges or barriers that they might experience, which might need to be discussed as it relates to career advising. So it is important that career advisors do have a little bit, at least of a basic understanding of what neurodiversity is, how it might impact employment and individuals, the candidates, but also making sure to listen to the students' experiences and perceptions, because we can't generalize because everybody's experiences is different. Listening to the individual, showing empathy, respect, understanding, and also whether or not they disclose, it's important to avoid making assumptions about the student.
With that in mind, I talked about barriers in terms of for neurodivergent students in finding employment. What type of career development strategies are used to prepare neurodivergent students in finding employment?
Yes, just like neurotypical students, it's important to advise holistically, consider the student as the whole person rather than just one part or just advising the major, because everybody is different, comes with different backgrounds, experiences, skill sets. So a few employment factors to account for include their education, their technical and soft skills, their geographic location, and then what they might want in a job as well. So the location, the workplace culture, the autonomy and schedule flexibility, working conditions. Everyone is going to have different preferences and also education, skills, background, experiences, things like that. And it's also important to consider intersectionality as well, because again, we want to avoid generalizing because there are a lot of different experiences that individuals have based on their many identities. And that is also going to be at play in their career path as well and their path as a student too.
Now, I know I've hired neurodivergent students in my office who are graduate students, and they've been very successful. They've even had them do workshops, critique resumes, and even train new interns. What would you say are some of the challenges that neurodivergent students would face, particularly in student life, life as a student on campus?
What you said about life on campus, there are so many social aspects of a college campus that can be overstimulating for all students, overstimulating, or your attention is being pulled in multiple directions. And that can be the most exciting part about being on a college campus, or it can be the most terrifying part of being on a college campus, and anywhere in between. So there are those social aspects of being on a college campus, especially when students do come to campus and they're in their first year. Coming from K-12, if they had accommodations, they are used to their case manager and their parents working with them and being right there with them along the way. And then when they get to college, it's all on them. So the responsibility is all on their shoulders to get accommodations, to talk with their campus disability center, chat with their professors about what accommodations or assistance they might need. And that's all in addition to this new social environment.
Okay.
The difference of being on a college campus versus from high school. They may also, with this new transition, face challenges in reaching academic success, obtaining gainful, relevant employment after earning their degree, and in general, comorbidities, particularly anxiety, depression, suicidality, are on the rise and affect neurodivergent students pretty significantly because it is in addition to their condition or neurotype. So these are amplified in these students, and depression, anxiety, suicidality, these are all on the rise for college students overall. So when we consider that it is just another thing, another challenge on top of neurodivergent students, these students really need a lot of support with everything that they've got going on.
Now, you talked about that these students need a lot of support, and at our office here at Rowan, we work closely with the Academic Success Center, which has counselors who work with neurodivergent students. What do some neurodivergent students excel at?
Yeah, it's important to not generalize because each individual is different and each neurodivergent individual is different. But there are a lot of neurodivergent students who take entrepreneurial or creative paths. Some take mathematical, engineering, technological paths. They really excel in these areas. So again, it really does depend on the person and not only the strengths presented through their neurotype, but also their natural skill sets and interests. And again, that's another reason why that career advising and career exploration bit is so important for these students, because a lot of times they struggle to pinpoint maybe not their interests and strengths, but how that might transfer into their academic journey or their career path.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in preparing for this podcast, I did some research, and there are a number of well-known celebrities who are neurodivergent that most people are unaware of. I came across Elon Musk, Dan Aykroyd, but can you share some of the other celebrities that people may not be aware of?
Yes. We just had the Summer Olympics, and Simone Biles brought home the gold, and she has ADHD. And that was something that was really validating for me to learn because I have ADHD, and seeing such success with someone who I can identify with on that aspect was really cool. Some others include Emma Watson, actress. She also has ADHD. David Beckham has OCD and Tourette's syndrome. Billie Eilish has Tourette's syndrome. Daniel Radcliffe, OCD, dyspraxia. Tim Burton, autism. So there are so many really well-known names out there who have these neurotypes or conditions, but have still found success and have used their talents and interests and very specific skill sets to do what they love and make a career doing it. And it just shows that you can be successful despite the barriers and despite the challenges.
So true. I even came across folks like Susan Boyle and Daryl Hannah. These are folks that we wouldn't even think, but they are part of the spectrum. I think in you sharing this information would be very helpful in terms of people now who may be reluctant to maybe seek help, where they see people just like them who have become very successful. With that, I was just thinking, what are the positive traits of neurodivergent people?
Yeah. So again, and I sound like a broken record, but it's important to not generalize because each individual is different. Each neurodivergent individual is different. But it is really important to consider these positive traits because I know from personal experience and from other neurodivergents that I've talked to, sometimes it really can feel just like the world is against you because of all of the barriers and challenges. But it is important to remember the unique strengths and gifts and skills that come with being neurodivergent. So some of these include hyperfocus, being able to really focus in on one specific topic or task and just really get in the zone and focus very heavily. Creativity. A lot of the famous individuals we spoke about are in the creative fields, and that's a really strong gift that a lot of neurodivergents have. Some others are attention to detail, empathy, cognitive processing speed. So there really are a lot of strengths and superpowers even, how they can feel like for neurodivergence.
Now, there are resources available for students.
Yes, there are a lot of resources available out there for students. One that I have been connected on within the past, I believe, 6 months. It's a newer peer-to-peer website is ND Connect. There are mentor and mentee opportunities to help with building friendships or professional relationships. And I'll make sure these are all linked in the show notes as well. Mentra is an employment network for neurodivergents in the tech industry. There's the Neurodiversity Hub, which includes work-ready programs and opportunities for networking, skill building, and internship experience. Disability Solutions Career Center, a job board featuring roles with companies dedicated to employing individuals with disabilities, and the Neurodiversity Career Connector as well, which is another one of those job boards specifically for employing neurodivergent individuals. And Lived Experience Educator, or Sunny Jane, offers free resources available to help neurodivergent better understand their neurotypes and improve their coping strategies. So those are all free resources on their website.
I know in my previous position, I was responsible for maintaining the website, and I had a link for students with disabilities, and there were a number of links that they could click on and get additional resources, and you had mentioned some of them as well. Now, with regards to professionals, are there any resources for them as well?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a lot of resources out there for professionals. So a couple that I learned about recently, actually, when I presented at the conference, I had mentioned some resources that I'd put together. And then afterward, a couple audience members approached me and provided me with more that I hadn't even known about. Resource sharing among professionals is also really important because you might not be aware of something that somebody else is, and it's a great resource. So that one would be the Job Accommodation Network, or askjan.org. Another one is the Employer Assistance and Resource Network on Disability Inclusion, or EARN.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a couple others. The College Autism Network. There's the ability to learn about current news and advocacy opportunities, review relevant research, attend trainings, and then they also host the annual College Autism Summit. The Neurodiversity Hub, again, can be a resource for professionals as well as students, helping aid students transition to higher education. As I had previously mentioned, that can be a difficult transition period from K-12 to higher education, helping ease that transition a little bit more. Learning about neurodiversity, cultural sensitivity, so understanding that a little bit more, to just have, again, that basic understanding when working with students who are neurodivergent. Professionals who work on a campus, their disability services office is likely a great resource. They work with these students, assuming the students are registered with their office, and I'm sure would be very willing to provide training or, again, just understanding some education for career services professionals or other student support professionals. Again, resource sharing, and helping to build bridges between students and employers with regard to their disabilities or neurodiversity. Something that I like to do when working with students with neurodivergent students is looking to see what other universities are doing. So there are a number of campuses across the nation who have neurodivergent career readiness or student success programs. So these are awesome resources. I was lucky enough to connect with the director of On Your Mark at Marquette University here in Milwaukee, which is just across town from my university, UWM. So seeing how they are able to support their neurodivergent students was really incredible, really cool. And so, again, resource sharing with other professionals, seeing what other professionals are doing is really important. I'll link all of those in the show notes as well.
Lauren, you've been sharing a lot of information and really open up not only my eyes, but hopefully our listeners as well. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Oh, probably. I think, again, just approaching the topic with curiosity and empathy and respect, and wanting to learn and understand from others' perspectives is really important, because, like I had mentioned, intersectionality plays a really crucial role in the topic of neurodiversity as well. These students have a variety of different backgrounds, different experiences, different perceptions of the world, different ways that they've experienced the world. And it's important to not generalize the students' experiences, but to listen to them and learn from them and understand, because that's how then we can advise better and make sure that they do find success. We want all of our students to find success, and that includes neurodivergent students, despite the different barriers that they might face.
Thank you. You've been listening to the NCDA podcast on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm Reuben Britt, and I'd like to thank Lauren Standish for providing a wealth of information. Until next time, remember, diversity doesn't look like anyone. It looks like everyone. Thank you.